How's it going, today? Welcome back to the Great Green North. Welcome to day one of irrigation install. What we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be telling you kind of a story about how the day went. We're going to be filling it in with clips of me actually doing the install. So here we go. Let's start by this. This irrigation install was done DIY by me and Great Green North Senior. When we started doing it, we both had a couple days off to complete it. However, the weather complicated things by cutting our time to complete it in half, because we were supposed to get about a week's worth of rain. So this whole irrigation install was put on the clock by the weather and by the fertilizer, as the grass is growing very early this year and we need to get the fertilizer down before all the rain starts. So let's start with day one. Day one started with quick trenching. We decided, as you'll see soon, we decided to kind of peel the ground open, is what we were calling the zipper method, as a hope to kind of pry that ground open, be able to shove the pipe in. We quickly realized that by prying the ground open was not enough to shove the pipe in. With the pipe we used, 3/4 inch pipe, that was just not enough. If you had 1/2 inch pipe, you might have been able to fit it in, but with 3/4, it was just not enough room. So what we ended up using was we ended up getting this crowbar. If you had a pickaxe, it would act as the same thing. We pried the grass open like a zipper. We used this crowbar, as you're seeing in footage, to kind of dig a little trench. The big thing about burying this pipe is you want to make sure that it's deeper than 4 inches, so that the deepest aeration spikes that you go to do on your lawn are not going to rip apart your irrigation lines. So the big thing was we were checking constantly with our hand to make sure that it was deeper than 4 inches, so that our aerator would not hit the pipe once we went to go put it in. So we used this crowbar to rip the trench open. When we got up to the garden, we had to do a lot of the digging by hand up there, as there was no grass to hold the soil together. And in under 4 hours, or about 3 hours, we got about 200 feet of pipe dug and laid. And then in about another 2 hours, racing the sun down, I was able to get all the fittings done, all the crimps done, and slowly get the heads on while I was doing some troubleshooting. So without further ado, check out the clips from today, then I'll tell you about the troubleshooting with the heads.
Today, we're going to be starting the installation of the in-ground irrigation system that's going to be covering this entire backyard for hopefully quite a bit of time into the future. So as you can see, folks, here's the pipe here. It's going to be going in starting today. Poly pipe 3/4 inch supply line for all of the irrigation heads. We have 4 different zones all running, and earlier this week I installed the timer on the side of the deck here, underneath the deck. So just for my personal preference, I've decided to start with what I would probably deem one of the longest lines. So it comes off the deck over there. As you can see, we started trenching up to the first head, which is here. The second head is up here where this poly pipe ends. And then the third head is all the way up in that back corner over there. So this line is almost 200 feet in itself. So that is why we've just decided to pick the longest line first. And we're working from the deck, from the spout out. Or if you're installing a system with a manifold, you're going to work from the manifold out. Step number 1 is you need to take your pipe and put it out in the sun. So we took our poly pipe. It's all been coiled by a machine. And if you don't leave it out in the sun, it doesn't become soft and pliable, and you really got to fight with it to get it in the ground. So we're taking the poly pipe, we've laid it out in the sun, we're making everything warm, the sun's going to heat it up a little bit, and definitely it's already a lot more pliable from laying out here all morning. So I did this first thing in the morning, laid it out, so allow it to become more pliable. So when we start to put it in the ground today, it's going to work. So we're not having a professional install it, we're doing it ourselves, and because we're doing it ourselves, the trenching is the hardest part. So instead of actually digging up trenches through my entire yard like we did on this side yard last year, I'll have some pictures up of that, what we are doing instead is running this. We're basically cutting in kind of like a trench with the shovel and just prying up almost like a zipper. We're going to shove the pipe in, and then we're going to close the trench back over afterwards. So irrigation lines don't have to be very, very deep. The 4-inch pipe that we put in over there for drainage had, I think it was buried like 36 inches deep at the deepest point. This is only going to be buried like 7 to 10 inches because we're going to blow it all out every winter. So what we have to do is we have to open this whole area up like a zipper all the way up to the top. We need to dig out where our heads are going to be so we can put our heads in. So without further ado, let me show you what I mean by opening it up like a zipper. See here, I've gone in with the shovel and I've kind of opened up these 2 areas like a zipper, so I can stick my hand all the way down in there. Everything's loose. Then next thing we're going to do, we're going to shove the pipe in there, and then we're going to close this back over. So just like a zipper, it's open, put the pipe in, close it back over. You shouldn't be able to see this damage. So let me show you how I did this with the shovel. So you take the shovel, jump on it with both feet until it goes all the way in, pull back until you see this area begin to pry up, push forward until you see this area begin to pry up. Now you've opened that area up like a zipper, and you should be able to get the pipe in there. So that's mainly what we're doing. Okay, so I think it's easier to see here. So after we've opened up the trench, we had to use the crowbar to really dig in there to open up that thing. And then after here, you can see we're stomping it down to really flatten it out. And as you can see, in the end, it almost looks like there's not really much damage at all. So it's kind of, it worked really well. So as you can see, we're opening it up with a shovel. I'm following behind with the crowbar, digging down, making sure that the pipe is at least 4 inches below the surface. Then as I'm doing that, my Great Green North Senior is walking up and down, compacting it. And as you can see in the end there, it almost looks like nothing really happened at all. So this method worked really good. If you had a pickaxe, it could act the same way as the crowbar. But as you can see, getting the pipe in here is really great. And then at the end here, you can see we had to dig out a hole. This is where a head is going to be. And then we just ran the pipe right through and came back into the connections afterwards. So as you can see here, that worked really well. So we got these hunks of grass up because there's going to be 4 pipes in this one trench. Other than that, the kind of the zipper method that we used to open this up really went well. Everything looks like it almost hasn't been touched. I mean, obviously there's dirt and stuff, but you can see there's the pipe down in there. That's where head number 1 is going to be. And then up the hill here, you can see where the line is. And then there's a second pipe in there. Then up here in this garden is where we really had to do the digging. So the line kind of comes up here, runs through this way, kind of underneath this path where the mulch has been disturbed. Then it kind of turns around that stone crop there, right in that corner, underneath this stump, kind of around the back. And this is where the last head's going to be. So this is what I was saying, why this is the longest zone, because you can see that head's there. The one's all the way back of the house. So now that definitely works well. This should be the only garden digging that we have to do. All the other ones are going to be in the lawn, so less damage. So probably I would say the most damage was through there, but I think we put it back pretty good. And yeah, not a lot of damage through here. Pretty happy. I'm going to get the lawnmower out now. I'm going to drive over the rut to kind of pack everything down. Then I'm going to do my connections and turn the line on. So I might do this connection over here first before I drive over it, and then go ahead and drive over it. So without further ado, let's get the 90 in here. Okay, so it's pretty hard to hear the audio in this clip, so I'm just going to give you real-time voiceover. So this is where the head is going in the connection. So the way that we put the line in, we did not put the connections in first. So we just ran the line straight through. So as you can see, I'm just kind of removing the dirt around the head. I know that I kind of want the line somewhere in the middle of the head. Now, these lines, we didn't slope down very well towards the hole before we cut them. So I ended up having to move back on the line and digging up to slope them down. So now I'm going to cut the line first, just about a little bit to the left of the middle. I'm cutting it with the pipe cutters there. As you can see, the blade on these pipe cutters was a little dull, so that's why it was this difficult. But if you had a nice sharp pair of pipe cutters, it'd be quite a bit easier. So now that I've cut the pipe nice and clean, I'm gonna grab the connection which I think I will show you hopefully here soon. Not exactly sure what I'm talking about. The big secret thing here is you want a nice clean cut on the pipe to make sure you get a good connection. So as you can see here, I'm grabbing a connection and I'm looking at the connection to see how much of the pipe I need to cut off the other end. So once I've taken a look at that connection, I'm going to quickly use the pipe cutter here to cut that little chunk off the other end. So in the end, it's only about 1 inch of pipe that you're removing to make sure that these connections fit. But yeah, so once you've done this, remove a little bit more dirt out of there, then I believe I made this mistake here. You're going to take your crimps and you're going to slide them on both ends of the pipe first. Don't do what I'm doing here, and I'm about to be an idiot and put the connection on before I put, oh, I did remember, you need to slide crimps on either side before you put that connection in the middle. Then you're going to push the connection in the middle. Now this is difficult, you're fighting the barbs on the connection. If you want a little bit more help, you can always take a torch and heat up the poly a little bit. On both days we were doing it, it was quite warm and we left the poly out in the sun, so the poly was warm enough that it was pretty easy to do the connection. So as you can hear, it's mainly just kind of working the pipe, making sure that connection's on nice and tight. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's pretty easy. You just need a little bit of muscle just to yank that on, make sure that connection's on nice and tight and secure. Then after you've figured out the connection's nice and tight and secure, you want to make sure that those threads for your head are facing straight up. So as you can see, it's facing on a little bit of an angle there, so I'm going to adjust that so it's facing nice and straight up. Then I'm going to take the crimps and I want to put the crimps as close to the edge of the actual fitting as I can. So as you can see here, I'm pushing them close to the edge and I'm adjusting them up so it's easier once I get in with the pinch crimp tool to pinch that crimp. So what these are doing is it's pinching that poly pipe up against that barbed fitting to make sure that it's not going to come out. So as you can see, taking the crimp tool, pinch crimp that fitting, pinch crimp that fitting, and now that's one connection done. So you can move on to your next connection. I'm going to flush that connection out before I screw the rotor on to make sure I get all the dirt out of that pipe. That's a little bit important. So flush all the pipe out of that, flush water out of that before you put the rotor on. But that's one connection done, and it's just rinse and repeat for the rest. There's a nice close-up of that. So those are the tight crimps. That will be your head that your head's going to screw onto. This is going to push down in the hole probably a bit. Might have to dig it out on either side. So once again, we're going to blow that out before. Make sure we get all the water out of this connection. Now up to the top. So as you can see here, just screwing on the heads. I've flushed out majority of the system already. Gotta wait for it, so I'm ready to go. There it goes. So it's got no nozzle to hold back the pressure, is the problem. So initial pressure test went well. Every head popped up and was running once we let the system bleed. But now we need to put the nozzles in the head because we're pumping out way too much water. From the one head, we're putting out like 16 gallons per minute at this head and not enough water up there. So if we slow the water down here, we'll force it up the line to those ones. So let's go.
Okay, so coming into troubleshooting with the heads, as I said in the previous video, I have done a bit of irrigation work. I would not call myself an irrigation expert. I would not call myself extremely experienced, but I would call myself an experienced irrigation person. If you had questions, I could help you. We had planned to use number 2 nozzles in the heads as they were going to throw about 37 feet and they were going to allow us an output of about 2 gallons per minute. However, we quickly realized that the pressure in the system while it was running was not enough to sustain that head. We were having pressure issues, especially with the large hill in my backyard. We were having pressure issues with the bottom and the top of the hill. So we switched out the number 2 nozzles for the 1.5s. They're putting out about 1.15 gallons per minute as they go. So a little bit less water, which all that means is it's going to take longer to water. It's going to take about an hour instead of 40 minutes. However, we did get the distance that we wanted with those heads, and the pressure issues went away after we kind of fiddled with the pressure regulator. So Day one definitely had a lot of fiddling to go along with. A lot of fiddling with the heads. The lines were a little too high. A lot of fiddling with the trenching, trying to figure out everything to do, and a lot of fiddling with everything. But once we got everything calibrated, by about noon the next day, we were able to kick on the heads for the first time, and everything is running. So day two, which was Friday, was supposed to be really, really rainy. It was supposed to rain all day, however, it didn't. So we just decided to get to work. We got to work putting in the second zone, and I did not record because we were fighting the rain for a good part of the day until the sun came out and it actually became beautiful. But day two, we got in zone 2, which is the zone up along the property line. We did run into a little bit of problem with roots. A lot of times we were working with small capillary roots, which we were able to just cut around, or if we were working with any large roots, we just fed the pipe underneath. This area over here did suffer a little bit more damage because there was less grass. This area is quite thin because it's heavily shaded and does not get watered substantially. It's going to be watered now. And so we did suffer a little bit more damage here, but it's nothing that a quick dose of fertilizer and the irrigation system will not fix on itself going into this year. So definitely day two was a win. We got the longest zone installed. This zone's about 250 feet, I would say, of pipe. The heads are the same as every other zone, it's just it's the farthest zone from the timer, so everything becomes a little more complicated. We got everything installed in, once again, about under 5 hours. We got all the heads running, we flushed the system out. A little bit of trick about flushing the system out, you need to put all your heads on except for the last head on the zone. Turn the zone on. The air pressure in these sprinklers is not enough to fight the check valve to pop the head up. So in order to get that air out of the pipe, you need to wait until the water comes shooting out of the end. That's going to evacuate all of the air out of the pipe. Then you can turn your system off, put that last head on, turn it on. It will kick the last little bits of water out of the heads, but there's enough water pressure in there now to get all your heads to pop up and to get everything started. Day two ended very successfully, fighting the sunset again. We got all the heads in, we got all the nozzles in, we put the 1.5s in again, we got everything turning on, and the morning of day three would just involve a little bit more leveling and play with the heads in order to get everything perfect. And day three would have hopefully been the final day. We hope to get the last two zones in by the end of day three. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys for watching for part 2 of this irrigation install series. Part 3 will be coming very soon. I plan to do a lot more filming. At the time of recording, part 3 is going to be recorded tomorrow. I plan to do a lot more filming while we get that final day of install to get everything installed and in the ground. And I definitely can't wait to have all these heads in the ground and be able to kick my system on and watch all those heads run. It's going to be awesome. So from the Great Green North, my name is Roy Murray. Definitely, any questions about irrigation install, you want to send me pictures or anything, you can send me pictures on my Instagram. It's right here on the screen. It's also in the description. You guys can check out my website, my Patreon. You guys can also leave comments down below. I answered the majority of the comments, so leave a comment down below. And from the Great Green North, my name is Roy Murray. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, keep it green, or I guess at this point, keep it in the water.